I'm going to read another story by Richard Saxon, who is Stephen King's son. Hi, Tracy. Hi, Laura Lynn. I hope the connection's good enough. Down here, it's not that great. It's still dark here. Excuse me. Hi, Gail. I can't fall asleep. Okay, good, Tracy. I'm getting tired, but I couldn't sleep. But I know I'm going to have to take a nap because I can't make it through the day without some sleep. And it's been so nice here, just Dave and I alone. This week, we're enjoying it together. Been nice. Okay, this story is called Angels Aren't Beautiful. My father was a harsh and broken man, nothing more than an empty shell of his former self after serving one too many tours in a war no one ever understood why we fought. I just lost the light on my phone. It didn't help when my mother, I'm going to lay down, so I hope everybody can hear. Sorry. Laying here on the couch. It didn't help when my mother, who'd already checked out mentally, fell pregnant with an unwanted child. Rather than reveling in the joy of creating life, my father dug himself deeper into the bitter hole of hatred he had spent so many years digging. Not only had I unwillingly intruded on his existence, but I was born with a pretty obvious birth defect. My face never fully developed in the womb, presumably due to the drugs my mother consumed to cope with the stress of abuse. Whatever the case, it left me with only one functioning eye and half a paralyzed face. It's not an excuse for what he did, it's only an explanation. He used to tell me that the day I was born was the worst day of his life, that I was nothing more than a burden, an accident not meant for this world. Needless to say, I hated myself. I felt ugly, and my father did everything in his power to make sure I understood just how much of a freak I was. He never put a hand on me, nor my mother. I'll give him that, I suppose. But abuse comes in so many forms, and despite not having the guts to kill me himself, I knew he wanted nothing more for me to just disappear. Even as a young child, I wished I had never been brought into this world. That would all change the night I met my very own angel. On one particularly long night, I was kept awake by another shouting match between my drunken father and my drugged out mother. We'd fallen into an extraordinary debt with both my dysfunctional parents unable to hold down a job. I lay hidden beneath my blanket, clutching my one and only friend, my stuffed animal, a swan that had suffered one too many tears, broken and ugly just like myself, but that's just what made me love it so deeply. Something shifted in the corner of my room, changing the entire atmosphere. The air turned heavy and the sounds of the heated argument were suddenly drowned out by muffled cries in the distance. Oh, let me get another pillow here. Let's see here. I peeked out from under the blanket, thinking my father had come up to shout at me, but the legs that greeted me did not belong to anyone or anything I had ever seen before. They were beaten and cracked, dark liquid seeping from the tears in the skin. As I moved my eyes up to see the rest of its naked body, it became apparent that this creature was severely wounded, charred skin covering the entity of its being. It appeared to be a man, at least shaped like one, 10 feet tall with dark wings extending from his back, half stripped of their feathers along the flesh, leaving nothing but exposed bones and tendons. If monsters could ever be described by their appearance, this thing would perfectly fit. I should have screamed, run for the door, or jumped out of the window, anything to escape that horrid sight. But something about the broken creature calmed my young self, soothed the fear that built up in my body. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice sounding tinier than it ever had. The creature looked at me in confusion. "You do not fear me?" he asked. "No, why? Are you bad?" He smiled, revealing a row of rotten teeth. "No, I'm not bad." But my form typically evokes a sense of fear in your kind. "Is it because you're ugly like me?" For a moment, he just looked at me, inspecting my malformed eye and paralyzed face. Then he laughed. "You may look different than your fellow humans, but your heart is as pure as the day you were born. I can see the good in you." The creature spoke in words my young self couldn't fully comprehend, but from the little knowledge I had, I could understand what he was. I never really knew my grandparents. In fact, my grandpa was the only one still alive by the time I came to this world, and I only met him the one time. Sick and riddled with tumors, he told me a story about the purest creatures in existence, the ones that would look after lost souls, such as himself, during their final moments in life. And for a reason I can't fathom, I connected his comforting words with the thing that was standing before me in my room. "Are you an angel?" I asked. He thought for a moment before responding. "I am a type of angel." "Then what's your name?" "My name? Our kind has no use for names. Everyone has a name, but if you don't have one, I will choose one for you." I thought long and hard before finally settling on the most suitable name I could come up with for an angel. For the angel. "I will call you Gary," I said excitedly. "Then that will be my earthly name." I glanced over his broken body once more, wondering if he had been born damaged like myself, or if someone had hurt him. "How come you look like that?" "Putting myself in a physical form comes at a cost, and it takes a toll on my existence. You see, I was not granted permission to come here." By then, my parents had stopped arguing. I must have been louder than I thought, because shortly after, I heard someone pacing through the hallway towards my room. Being loud after bedtime was a strict no-no, a rule that applied only to myself. My father slammed the door and barged into my room, holding open the neck of a half-empty bottle, slurring in his words. "I've had it with this." He stopped dead in his tracks, gasping briefly before suddenly choking. Something invisible stopped him from moving an inch, and I saw the angel staring intently at my father with a gleaming smile across his face. "What the F are you?" my father managed to push out between gasps of air. "I am here to protect this child. You have inflicted enough damage, and now you will receive my judgment." My father started twitching, joints bending in unnatural directions, cracking beneath the unseen force. He gargled, coughing up blood as his body contorted into an undefinable mess of flesh and viscera. Before I could even process what was happening, he expanded, boils and blisters appearing on his skin, just moments before he exploded, covering the wall behind with whatever remained of his existence. I let out a quiet yelp. It was as much as my terrified little body would allow. "I'm sorry that you had to witness this. Had there been another way," the creature was interrupted by my sulking. "He meant you harm, and with time, he would have caused your death. Not today, nor tomorrow, but I had to stop him before he caused irreparable damage." With a view of his hand, the remains of my father turned to dust and disappeared, leaving no trace that a murder had just happened. "I have to go. I will return when the time is right, but I'm afraid this is just the beginning of things to come. I am so sorry." I don't remember much else from that night, apart from my mother hysterically screaming as she realized her husband was gone, the police asking questions as he was reported missing. Of course, they never found him, and with the assumption that he had simply taken off, the investigation quickly turned cold. It was a bittersweet turn to a better life. Things rapidly improved in the couple of years following my father's death. My mother did her best to get clean from drugs, even got a job, and for the first time in my life, I felt like someone loved me. The trauma I had experienced did not linger over us. It was as if something was protecting my memory, preventing me from reliving that terrible moment. My mother and I moved away to a different city, attempting to create a fresh start. Getting enough money for such an endeavor proved difficult, but somehow we managed. At least so it seemed for a short while. Unfortunately, it wasn't meant to last. Despite her best efforts, it's not an easy feat to be a single mother trying to battle addiction while hopelessly drowning in debt. One slip-up was all it took, which just happened to occur during my first day at a new school. I could already tell something was wrong when she picked me up from school, and in hindsight, I should have understood enough to alert a teacher, but suffering from trust issues and being incapable of thinking even moments ahead, I let her get behind the wheel of a car. Not 5 minutes after we started driving, she missed a stop sign, and we were hit in the side by a bus. It's true what they say, time really slows down as adrenaline surges through your body. The sight of glass shattering through the car and metal bending inwards is something that has been stuck in my mind for many years. But no matter how hard I try, a moment of pure terror is all I remember before blacking out. When I came back to it, I found myself lying on the side of the road, somehow unscathed from the ordeal. I could see our car smashed to pieces further down the road, but something had taken me out before it even hit the ground. "I'm sorry," a familiar voice said. I turned around to see my angel standing above me, even more decayed than the first time we'd met. His flesh had fallen from his chest, revealing ribs and organs, still pulsating heavily with each breath. "Where's my mommy?" I asked. "I could only save one of you." His words carried the burden of guilt and sadness. He bent down to my level, reaching out his rotten hand. "I believe this belongs to you." It was the swan plushie. He brushed off some pieces of glass and gave it to me. "She's dead, isn't she?" I asked. He nodded. "Why couldn't you save her?" "I was not supposed to." "Why not?" "One day you will have all the answers, but until then, you have to be patient. It's not time for you yet." "I don't understand." Before I could ask more questions, the angel had disappeared, leaving alone with no one but the mangled corpse of my mother still stuck inside the car. Years passed, and I spent most of my childhood moving from one foster home to another. Trauma and abuse take their toll on a young child, and as it was, I simply couldn't fit in with a new family, and I found none willing to take care of someone so broken. Every now and then, I would remember the angel's words from our first meeting, that the bad things were just beginning. But though my childhood was lonely, it was relatively safe. I wouldn't see my angel again until I started high school. If you ever thought bullying stops at a certain point during education, that people somehow mature as they get older, you'd be sorely mistaken. Due to my deformed appearance, I couldn't seem to escape the nasty looks or gangs of bullies. A particularly bad crew of people were led by a girl named Jennifer, putting chairs in front of bathroom doors as I entered to spare others the sight of my disgusting face, is what she said. One day, just following physical education, I wasn't fast enough to shower and exit the locker room, and as a result, I found myself trapped by Jennifer's vicious gang of misfits. They had stolen my clothes, pointing out that if I just spent the rest of the day naked, maybe it would distract people from my disfigured head. They laughed together as they shoved me around. Cold, wet, and naked, I could do nothing but hold back my tears. Out of nowhere, my angel appeared. He placed himself directly behind the squad of girls and looked at me. His wings had mostly fallen off by that point, leaving only a few bone fragments protruding from his back, and his face had become an unrecognizable mess of torn flesh. Sorry. He simply nodded before vanishing into thin air, as he always did. No sooner had the angel left before Jennifer started screaming her lungs out. She had glanced in the mirror and seen the angel, but that wasn't what caused her to get upset. "What have you done to me, you crazy bitch?" she yelled at me. Why did I think this was a boy? Guess it's a girl. I didn't understand what she was so freaked out about. If not this, oh yeah, it would be girls, wouldn't it? In the locker room. Okay, the shower, yeah. If not the sight of the angel, then what could be so bothersome? But I didn't care to stick around, and after getting dressed in record time, I spurted out of the room. No one bullied me after that day. However, the rumors had reached every corner of the school, and people genuinely thought I was a witch. Jennifer never returned, and no one would tell me what happened to her. Whatever it was, she didn't. Did you, Tracy? I just saw the chat pop up. It freaked me out a little. I have the camera on, but it's still so dark in here. Wonder why it's not lighting up. Wait, I'll turn it this way maybe. Not that it matters, but yeah, here we are. I'm here. I'm laying down here. Oh. Let's see. Whatever it was, she didn't deserve it, despite the things she did to me. No one deserves the wrath of an angel. I spent the next few weeks searching out the angel, waking up at night yelling for his attention, but he never responded. In a bizarre and cruel turn of fate, the bullying had become the only attention anyone ever gave me, and without even that, I felt more isolated than ever. Sleep eluded me, and for each night spent crying, I came closer and closer to finally taking the step and ending my miserable existence. I guess the angel didn't see that coming, because for some reason, he appeared to me once again, only this time, I was my own danger. You finally come to see me again? Why do you even bother? Isn't there anyone more important you can protect? Someone who actually matters? You have a good heart. That is why I chose you, he said calmly. Chose me for what? I responded, more annoyed than sad. He didn't respond to my question. I was once a human too, a long time ago, and I was chosen to protect people. Even now, I do not know why they chose me. So you were picked to protect people like me? No, my job was to protect important people, those who would have had an impact on history, and I followed those orders for millennia without questioning my orders, fully believing that it would shape history, lead it in the right direction. But the people who impact the world aren't always good at the core, a fact that it took me far too long to realize. I was confused. At that point in time, it didn't feel like I would have any important impact on history, so I asked the only question I could. So you think I'll have an important impact on the world? He shook his head. I cannot define importance. I cannot define importance, nor external beauty, nor fairness. I abandoned my post because I stopped believing in it. That is why I deteriorate each time I visit you. I'm not supposed to protect you. So why do you? Because you are a good person. Good enough to let other people suffer? I asked, getting angrier by the minute. He looked at me in confusion, as if his past actions hadn't allowed other people to get hurt, to even die. I do not understand. What did you do to Jennifer? I demanded to know. She had been a horrifying nightmare during the past couple of years. But did her torture warrant whatever the angel had done? I only made her see what she truly is, he said. And what is that? Someone with darkness in their heart. I shook my head in a mixture of sadness and anger. What's going to happen to her? That does not matter. Yes, it effing does. The truth about herself will weigh her down, and she'll eventually give up on herself, because the only thing she sees in the mirror is her own soul. Her life will end by her own hand. We stared at each other in silence. Despite no words being spoken, we communicated. The angel showed me visions of the future, the pain I would go through because of the evil in people's hearts, and he showed me that all of it could be fixed if only I allowed him to help me. I won't let you do this. Stop it right now. I have to protect you. Not like this. You care about her. Despite what she has done, I thought about the statement for a while. Of course she meant nothing to me, but letting someone kill themselves so I could avoid discomfort was a disturbing thought. Whatever you did, undo it. This is not how I want to deal with my problems. So her actions should not be punished. She is a kid like me. She can still change. He acknowledged my demand, and I could tell he was about to leave. Wait! I rummaged through my drawer to look for my old things. After a minute, I pulled out the swan plushie from my childhood. By then its color had faded, and each limb was partially torn. This is for you, to remind you that just because something is broken, it doesn't mean it's not beautiful, and it doesn't mean it can't be fixed. With that, he disappeared once more. Over the next decade, he appeared a couple of times, but never got close enough for us to exchange words. Even from a distance, I could see he was falling to pieces, degenerating more with each appearance. Though my life never felt threatened, I know he must have done something to save my life. I'm not even sure I want to know. Only hints of dangerous things would let me know that there are horrors in this world around each corner, and if we knew half of it, we'd probably be too terrified to even leave our homes. I started wondering if everyone had their own angel like mine, one that had abandoned their post in order to protect insignificant but decent people. It wouldn't be until the summer of 2018 we would be close enough to even exchange words. And as I now know, it would be for the very last time. It was on a simple night out. After years of coming to terms with my past, I had gotten an education, a job, and even a few friends. Life had become bearable. We decided to hit the clubs. My friends insisted I try something new, but I left early. Clubs were really not my scene, but it's not always safe to go home alone at night. It's not safe when people think you're an easy target. As I crossed the empty street, a heavily dressed stranger approached me. He was wearing a hoodie, just enough to make it impossible to identify him, and it immediately made me uncomfortable. He bumped into me and demanded that I hand over my wallet. As he did, I felt something hard pressed against my side, either a knife or a gun. I was never good at identifying these things, but I feared for my life. Immediately after feeling panic set in, I saw my angel appear before the both of us. He was missing a leg, and half his face had started to slough off. The mugger screamed in horror and froze. My memory shot back to my paralyzed father being torn apart by the angel, but this time nothing happened. The mugger simply stood frozen in place for a minute. I will not kill him, but he will be in a great deal of pain when he wakes up, the angel said. The mugger fell limp to the ground. A few drops of blood seeping from his nose and ears. As soon as the threat was eliminated, the angel collapsed as well. He was falling apart. I ran over and embraced what remained of him in my arms. I wanted to say something, provide a few words of comfort, but nothing came out. "Do you remember the name you gave me?" he asked. I thought back to our first meeting. It was just a stupid thought by a 5-year-old girl, but I remembered. "Yes, I called you Gary." He smiled at me. "That is a good name." "Thank you," I said, as tears started forming in my eyes. His flesh tore apart under my fingers, just disintegrating as I held his hand, leaving behind pieces of flesh and bone fragments. "Please tell me how I can save you." "I have lived for thousands of years, and only by helping you was it worth anything. I made my choice. The question is, will you accept?" "Accept what?" "I chose you for a reason. The world needs someone to keep them safe. Normal people just trying to get through life." I knew what he was suggesting. He wanted me to be an angel like him, to help others in need. How would I even do that? "You just have to say yes." His face started to fall apart, jaw falling off, leaving him unable to speak. All he did was reach out his hand. In it, he held the swan I had given him years earlier. That would be his final act before he passed. I cried, holding my angel's dead body. He had kept me safe my entire life, and for the first time ever, I was truly alone, wondering what even happens to angels as they die. It had been 1 month since I last saw Gary, and since then, it has been 1 month since I last saw Gary, and since then, I've tried to make a choice. If I decide to leave my life behind, I figure I won't disintegrate like him, seeing as I haven't betrayed any higher power. Life has been hard, and it has left much to be desired. And if I leave now, I'll never live a happy life. But I can spend the rest of eternity protecting the less fortunate people of this world. I guess no one here will ever see me again, not after I leave. In fact, I'm not entirely sure how all of this will work, but I suppose I'll have all eternity to figure it out. One thing is for sure, if anyone ever needs me, I'll be there. Oh, I liked that one. That was good. Anybody else like that? Isn't that a good one? Anybody? It was good, huh, Tracy? Oh, excuse me. I'm going to read another one. You don't have to stay, but maybe somebody will listen later. If I go viral or something, which I do sometimes. This one's called Arbor Vitae. All I ever wanted was for my mother to love me. I wanted her to utter the 3 words every child needs to hear. The comforting sentence so many go without. Don't get me wrong, my mother was an amazing woman in many ways. It's not like she abused or neglected me in any physical way. In fact, she did everything a parent is supposed to do. Hi, Rosie M. I'm laying here on the couch reading more stories because I couldn't go to sleep. I had stuff on my mind. You know how that is, right? So you're just in time, okay? Just in time for this one. The first story was really good, Rosie. You should really listen to it whenever you get a chance. It's not like she abused or neglected me in any physical way. In fact, she did everything a parent is supposed to do. She raised me, fed me, helped me with my homework, made sure I behaved, and never let any harm come to me. And she did it all alone. I hope I don't lose. I hope the phone's charged enough. Oh, it should be okay. I'm using Dave's phone and mine. Okay, let's see. From any outside perspective, she seemed like oh great. Now the light for Dave's plants came on in the other room. He has a like a plant nursery in this house. It's crazy. I hate when that comes on. Let's see. From any outside perspective, she seemed like the perfect mother, but on a more intimate, personal level, she just wasn't there. She seemed hollow, like a person going through life on autopilot, following basic instructions on how to live. She never showed any emotion. That was the only image I ever had of my mother. She'd been like that ever since she had me. My father died before I was even born, taken away by a drunk driver a few months before my birth. As if that wasn't enough, my mother fell ill shortly after I came into this world. She got so sick, the doctors were sure she'd perish. Still, she prevailed. Even after her miraculous recovery, she never smiled. She was broken, but I knew for a fact that she hadn't always been that way. I'd seen photos and old videos of her past life, a happy one filled with joy and love. From that, I knew there existed a time long since past where my mother smiled, laughed, and loved. If only I'd known her then. Still, my childhood wasn't a miserable one. It was a rather peculiar existence, filled with questions I wasn't mature enough to ask or understand. My mother, despite her recovery, had excessively fluctuating health. As time passed, her skin grew pale, her hair thinned, and her figure turned emaciated, all in the span of a week. 1 week, guys. That's kind of terrible. Then she'd wake up one day and be back to her normal self. How she pulled that off was a question no one could answer, but she did a good job of hiding it, using makeup and baggy clothes. Oh, I gotta sit up here and get a drink of water. I'm gonna turn this. I got a old shirt on that I don't want anybody to see me in. Something to sleep in, you know what I'm saying? Oh, excuse me. Oh, and it's daylight here. Daylight. It's daytime now. Still hear the crickets, though. Okay, let's see. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night due to her shuffling around. I was usually quite the heavy sleeper, but on the rare occasion that the sounds awoke me, I could see her get into her car and drive off for hours at a time. Hey, Mary. Mary, you need to listen to the first story, okay? When we're done. Hi, Sherry. The first story I thought was really good. I got this freaking headache too. Can't get it to go away. But it's just one of those dull ones, you know. Let's see. Yeah, sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night due to her shuffling around. I was usually quite the heavy sleeper, but on the rare occasion that the sounds awoke me, I could see her get into her car and drive off for hours at a time. Once a week, she'd vanish into the darkness of the night, only to return looking healthier than ever. She claimed it was all business, and as a young child, I had no reason to doubt that claim. The other oddity was that her car had a constant smell of rot and metal. No matter how often she cleaned it, the stench would linger. She just said it was a leaky pipe, which didn't make any sense. But how much does a 10-year-old really know? That's the thing about growing up under strange circumstances. No matter how weird something is, you get you get used to it. It wouldn't be until I turned 17 and could afford my own car before I noticed how off the smell truly was. Not that mine was particularly clean. It was a secondhand piece of crap that stank, but at least it beat the constant stench of rotted flesh. As I grew up into a semi-independent teenager, I interacted more with the world around me. Oh, I'm going to sit up some. Let's see. The world around me. Let's see. It was then I realized just how odd my life had been. My mother's rapidly fluctuating health, her nighttime disappearances, it was too much to ignore. Once time had come for me to move on to college, my curiosity had reached the end of its rope. I couldn't leave town behind without knowing what the hell was going on. She still went out on her strange trips in the middle of the night. So the weekend before I left, I decided to follow her and find out exactly what she was doing. It was an easy enough task. She better not be a vampire. I don't want no vampire story. Oh. I'm gonna sit up even more, guys. Oh, gosh. It's not usually this hard to get up here, but I'm trying not to show myself. Look at my supply of decoupage paints and everything. Carolyn's got me doing something all the time. She's always getting me into some project. Let's see. It was an easy enough task. I could usually tell when her trips would be just by looking at the status of her health. She'd always be at her frailest just before the trips. Nightfall came, and I patiently waited for my mother to leave the house. She'd never been particularly quiet, but then again, as I was an extremely heavy sleeper, she never had to. I could hear her shuffle around downstairs, and I knew the time had come. As soon as she left the house, I sneaked out and went to get my car down the street. In the dark, I figured she wouldn't recognize me or my car, but trailing someone would always raise a hint of suspicion. I kept what I supposed was a safe distance and followed her. I'd expected her to head into town, but instead, she drove away from the city into the empty countryside. It didn't take me long to realize exactly where we were heading, Arbor Woods. I'd only ever been there once on a school field trip. It was a dreadful place, full of dead trees and barren ground. What had once been an idyllic haven, full of life, had for unknown reasons perished. After years of neglect, only one road led there. It was an ancient concrete path that had been partially retaken by the little nature that had survived there. Now I am starting to get sleepy. By keeping my distance, my mother had driven out of sight. I figured she'd be. Oh, it's not hurting that bad. It's really not. It's fine. Oh. Ah. Ugh. Um. Let's see. Where are we here? I figured she'd be forced to stop sometime before the road ended, so it didn't bother me too much. To be sure I remained hidden, I got out of my own car and walked the rest of the distance. Before long, I saw her. She was pulling out a large black bag from the trunk. It was massive, and I couldn't quite believe she was strong enough to even lift it. She turned her flashlight on and headed straight into the woods with purpose. In order to stay hidden as I traced her, I had to keep my own flashlight turned off. It was a hard task to walk around the woods in the dark, but I could easily follow the light from my mother as long as I made sure not to trip over each and every tree root in my way. An hour passed, and we'd gotten deep into the woods. I'd cut myself on a few of the dead branches and bruised my knees from the occasional fall, but at least I hadn't been seen. It was an exhausting trek, yet my mother never stopped for a second, all while carrying that massive bag. The deeper into the forest we went, the denser it got. The little moonlight before quickly got covered up by intertwining branches. Then I stepped and slipped on something wet. I groaned as my back hit the ground and a liquid seeped through my shirt. It was oddly warm and had the same rotting stench as my mother's car. I pushed myself back up, quickly realizing that I'd lost track of my mother. Defeated and with rising anxiety, I decided to give up. While I couldn't find the same way back, I knew I just had to head east until I reached the road. Have to take another drink. Yes, I can. You did, Brian Clan. Yes, Rosie. I wait. I think that's at the other. No, I have some here. Yeah, we have some here. I'll do that. That's a good idea, Rosie. You're so sweet. You're always thinking about me coughing. But first, I decided to check exactly I'd stepped in. It was a puddle of fresh blood. Oh, no, Brian Clan. I'm not sick. Rosie, you're almost 84. That's fantastic. That is awesome. Yeah, I am on late, right? Brian Clan. Uh, yeah, look, it started out dark with crickets. Look now. Dave's in bed. He's been in bed for a few hours. Probably thinking, what in the heck? Why is she still up? Okay, let me get back to this. Brian Clan, that first story I read was good. You should listen to it whenever you get a chance. Several tarry black roots stretched out from the puddle as if it was feeding. Each and every tree in the vicinity was covered in the same dark material. They pulsated as I passed them, clearly alive, but not what they were supposed to be. I carefully backed away, getting ready to run east, when I accidentally walked into one. It twitched in response, and fresh blood oozed from a broken twig. By then, panic had taken over me. I didn't care if my mother discovered me anymore. I just wanted to get out of there. "Mom!" I called out. No response. I tried to calm myself down, slowly trying to sneak past the fleshy trees. I did my best to move east, hoping the forest would thin out. Instead, more of the dark trees appeared, each having their roots centered in puddles of blood. "Mom, please, where are you?" I kept calling out as I wandered, praying for any kind of rescue. The ground started to twitch beneath my feet, filled to the brim with hidden roots that sensed my presence. A few of them wriggled up to the surface and reached out after me. While I focused on the ground, one of the branches got a hold of me and enveloped itself around my arm. As I violently snatched my arm out from its grip, I could feel my wrist shatter. "Help!" I called out before being slammed to the ground. It knocked the wind out of me, but among the chaos, I heard an all too familiar voice. "I'm not doing this anymore." It was my mother, and she was close. "This is the last time. I don't want to be saved again," she said. Whoever she was talking to, they remained silent throughout the conversation. "You've given me life? This isn't a life. I'm just a broken fragment of what I once was. It ends now." She paused for a moment, as if listening to something. "No, I won't." I could hear her getting angry, but why, I couldn't tell. "You wouldn't. You effing wouldn't," she shouted with more emotion I'd ever heard. I wriggled myself free from the enveloping branches and ran towards the voice. It led me to a large opening rid of any plants, save for a massive central tree covered in a dark red mesh. My mother stood before it, her body fused with the roots beneath her. Her skin blended seamlessly with the black material. At that moment, they were one and the same. At her side, I saw the empty bag and a rotten deer carcass being consumed by the ground. The stench was overwhelming. That's what she'd been carrying. I moved closer, too shocked from the sight to speak a single word. The pitch black flesh covered the entire ground around the central tree, and it looked as if my mother was speaking to it. No sooner had I taken a step into the opening than the ground started wrapping around me. "No, let me go," I yelled in protest. Oh, this is getting, I don't want to keep reading this. This one's getting dumb. I think I'm just getting, let me see. I don't think it's a lot longer. Really, Rosie? That's cute, Rosie. Wait, now okay, maybe this isn't so dumb. I kind of went through it a little more. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, okay. I will in a couple minutes. This one's almost over. No, let me go, I yelled in protest. Tiny roots dug their way into the muscle of my legs, fusing with my nerves. A shock-like sensation shot through my spine, and with that, I too was connected to the forest. 1,000 years of memories surged through my body, and I could finally hear who my mother was speaking to. We need flesh, a deep, broken voice said. No, I shouted as the roots kept growing up towards my torso. You promised to feed us, it continued. Even though I was in agony, I felt confused. What promise was it talking about? I'd never even been there before. Then it hit me that I was hearing the other side of my mother's conversation with the tree. We gave you life. You will provide. No, I won't, I could remember my mother saying. I was finally putting the puzzle together. Then we shall take what you love the most. My focus shifted, and my mind drifted into memories long since past. They didn't belong to me, I knew that much. Still, they seemed ever so familiar. At first, there were just brief flashes of happier days. I saw my father propose to my mother, and the unexpected pregnancy that would result in my birth. Smiles, laughs, hugs, kisses. I saw a better life that had stopped existing. Then there was the accident. My father's comatose body lying in a hospital bed. My mother crying. She could do nothing but watch him die. She already knew she'd be alone raising me. An immense wave of sadness followed, but in the midst of it all, I felt a glimpse of happiness. It was a spark of joy my mother had felt as my birth approached. Suddenly, I saw myself in my mother's arms. She looked down upon my tiny, wrinkled body and smiled. I'll love you forever, she said. It was a pure feeling of bliss, and I knew she meant it. The scene shifted, and I found myself in an office. The doctor sat behind his desk with a somber expression on his face. In his hand, he held a file that belonged to my mother. Lymphoma, stage 4. I'm so sorry, but there's nothing we can do, he said. How long? A year at most. My mother turned around to check on me. There I was, a toddler, sitting in the corner of the office, playing with a toy. Everything went dark, and I could feel the disease that had ravaged my mother's body. Next thing I knew, we were back in the woods. Only it was still a memory. At that moment, the forest was still a beautiful place, lush and full of life. She was walking through it alone, trying to come to terms with her diagnosis. That's when she found this place, the tree made from flesh. Its roots quickly enveloped around her, and in her weakened state, she could do little to fight it. Still, the tree never consumed her, because it knew she was tainted with disease. Instead, it offered an alternative option, a promise that would break her forever. You wish to live, it asked. Yes, please, just let me go. Let you go? Your body is fading. Whether from us or the poison within you, you will die. Only we can help you. Help me? What are you talking about? How? We need flesh. You will provide. We will save you. She didn't respond, but the tree didn't need her to. It could sense everything within her just by touch. You do not fear death, yet you wish to linger. Why? I don't want to leave my son behind. Compassion cannot save you without us. We will keep you alive. In return, you will provide flesh. As if a switch had been flicked, the disease vanished from her frail body. With it, emotion, hunger, thirst, and love got ripped out. All that remained was a husk of her former self. Yet she chose to stay behind, only to make sure someone took care of me. The memories flowed through my mind, but a muffled sound broke through to me, a voice calling out, begging for me to wake up. "Let him go," my mother yelled. Those were the words that finally jolted me back to reality. The haze faded from my mind, and the warm, wet branches tightened around my body. I could barely breathe. "Stop it," she yelled again. For a second, the roots and branches loosened around me. I collapsed to the ground and tried to crawl away from its reach. My mother was still fused to the creature, but she'd somehow forced her will upon it, if only for a brief second. "I'm sorry," she said. I was speechless. Too much information had been forced into my mind. "You need to go now. I can't keep them down for long," she continued. But what about you? My body died many years ago. I only wanted to stay with you long enough to watch you grow up. You're an adult now. You don't need me anymore. Please, just go." The branches dug deeper into her. The creature that had once kept her alive was now consuming her. "Go," she yelled. I didn't have a choice. With my broken arm and bruised body, I got to my feet and started running. I wanted so desperately to help, but I knew it was a futile thought. I'd fled, dodging the roots that reached out for me. I slipped, fell, and crawled, never stopping until I finally saw the road. Once I got into my car, 1,000 thoughts ran through my mind. I contemplated returning with help, but I knew my mother wouldn't want that. Her life wasn't one she wished to keep. All she needed was for me to be okay. She'd done exactly what she set out to do. I truly wish my mother had a better life. Unfortunately, fate is a spiteful bitch. She had to keep living after death, and she did it all for me. In the end, I always had what I wanted, a mother that loved me. Aww. Okay, guys. Think I can take me a little resty poo. The old mind's shutting down now. Thank you for coming. Don't I look cute? I liked the first one a lot better. Okay, y'all. I can't believe you're 84, Rosie. Thanks, Mary, Brian Clan, Tracy B, Gail B. Gail, you stayed for it? Mary. Okay, guys. And happy birthday, Kevin. Happy birthday. See you guys later. I know you're 16. Yeah, right. Good night and day, everybody. I will, Rosie, and you too.